What's going on, guys? Welcome to another Game Time Discussions. My name is Emery Cussy. I'm sitting here with Cameron Selby. And today we're going to go over the biggest games that we saw on the 2024 NFL schedule release. Just some of the anticipated games that we're excited to watch and also have implications playoff-wise and seeding-wise that we're going to see this year. But yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them huge rivalry games on here, as well as playoff rematches. There's anticipated ones of just that's a benchmark of, all right, this is the game that decides where your season goes,
Right.
etc. and so on. So we're gonna kick it off with the opener. Baltimore Ravens, Kansas City Chiefs rematch of the AFC Championship game, Thursday night football. Very, very interesting game. Both teams are really good at starting the season strong. And so I just am excited to watch it because I don't know how the needle is going to sway, because both teams will be very, very motivated coming out. I don't see a hangover by either team, and it's just going to be two teams duking it out very early on. It's going to be exciting to watch.
Yeah, when you get week one, you want to find the best game, of course. And, well, the NFL gave us one of those games where you're like, okay, rematch. It's the best two teams in the AFC based on roster construction and everything. Multiple MVPs at quarterback position, 2 times for Lamar, and I want to say 2 times also for Patrick Mahomes. So, yeah, we've got, big time players on both sides of the ball. I get excited watching Chris Jones against the heavy run game against Baltimore. And so it just, it's going to be fun. It's just going to be a fun game. Lots of high-powered offense, lots of, one team runs the ball, one team throws the ball, and we're just going to get the best of everything when we go watch this game. So it's exciting for sure.
Right. And then our next one, this is my favorite game on the entire NFL slate in 2024. Week 17 Monday Night Football is Detroit traveling to San Francisco for an NFC Championship rematch. Detroit had San Fran on the ropes, and essentially 2-possession game, had the chance to make it 3-possession, and they said, screw it, we're going to go for it, and didn't work out. And then they end up losing the game. I don't know if San Fran could have came back from 3 scores down.
Right.
And now I just know Detroit in red pen just has that game circled. Saying whatever happens leading up to that game does not matter. That is the game where we're going to have our most energy. And San Francisco, it'll be interesting. They have one of the most, they're probably 1 and 2 easily in terms of best rosters in at least the NFC. And I think it's going to be a very contested battle that both of those teams are going to be in the hunt for the 1 seed, and could very well decide it in that very game.
Yeah, and I think also, you have a Dan Campbell run team where you get hyped up just to watch them do normal things. Now you're like, okay, well, we're going to play the team that knocked us off last year. We're going to go into there and deal with them when we get there, And so I get excited just because it's a Dan Campbell team that, with this type of atmosphere, type of game, he's not going to, of course, he'll probably go in for it on 4th down again. It won't be surprising to anybody. Right. He'll probably do something crazy. But that's why we love watching his football games. And great O-line on the Detroit side, great defense on the other side. It's going to just be another fun, probably not a high-scoring game, but just good football. And that's what we'd like to see. We like to see good football over just like, the Raiders versus the Chargers going for 120 points. So.
And then singling it out, being on primetime Monday Night Football slate, is just going to be super, super exciting. But we're going to stay in that same week 17. This is a Christmas game, Baltimore at Houston, another playoff rematch. Essentially, it's a Wednesday game, kind of singled out. This is the first time non-COVID era that the NFL's played on a Wednesday. They really tried to make an emphasis because of how well Christmas games have gone. And again, 2 teams that are going to be 10 to 12 win teams, division contenders. A lot of playoff implications with this game.
Yeah, we're going to take the spotlight off of basketball now on Christmas, and we'll get, Houston is going to make this list a couple times. Baltimore is going to make this list a couple times, but when they play each other, it's going to be a clash of styles. You get the heavy run game coming from Baltimore. You get that style and stuff. And I think that, that game is going to be just as important, similarly to how KC was with against Baltimore, with playoff implications. Baltimore wants to be the 1 seed. They're going to have to go through Houston in this situation. So I think that that's important to kind of note too. And then KC will be on this list a lot, San Francisco, but they get to play each other week 7. That game, middle of the year, not that important to playoffs or anything like that, but it's like we're going to play the Super Bowl over again. We're going to see what happens. And I think, it's always interesting because KC doesn't play as well during the regular season as they do in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that game, they're going to come out firing.
Right. Yeah, so. These two teams have played twice in the last 5 years in the Super Bowl. Obviously, Kansas City winning both matchups, but both of them were right down to the wire. Both times, San Fran had 10-point leads in the second half. It'll be interesting. Kansas City is actually coming off a bye, and then San Fran will be playing Seattle the week before on Thursday night, so they'll have a mini bye. So both teams will have plenty of rest. It's going to be primetime 3:30 game. Tom Brady will be on the call. It's just going to be absolute ratings bonanza. I mean, couldn't ask for a better matchup right in the middle of the season. It again means nothing for the playoffs. Who knows if they'll be the matchup, but they're the two favorites coming into the year in terms of Super Bowl odds. And, we're just going to see a great football game for interconference.
Absolutely. So then you get a division game going from non-conference to just straight to division. Week 17 again. We're going to talk about Philly versus Dallas. I think that, we just had our conversation on our overview of the schedules, and we kind of talked about how we thought Dallas and Philly were going to end the year. Well, this game is kind of what tells you how that ends up. Who wins the division comes down to week 17 between them.
Yeah, I think this is the third straight year that either week 16 or 17 Dallas and Philly have played each other, and
Makes sense.
It's a good reason behind it. It makes a lot of sense. It has a big draw, big rivalry game. Comes down to the division. I'm actually surprised that this wasn't flexed into the Sunday night football slate. Instead, it's Miami and Cleveland, and that this is our third game already on the slate, week 17. But just a lot of playoff implications. Rivalry game probably decides the division.
Yeah.
Very, very exciting matchup, and they always deliver.
Yeah, and then this one I brought up because we're from Texas, and Battle of Texas is a little bit closer than it used to be.
Yep.
So we get Dallas versus Houston, week 11, and when it comes down to it all, like right now, Houston has the better roster, has the better team, but Dallas has kind of been the big brother for a long time. So can Houston get over that hump? That's something you have to ask yourself.
It's going to be very exciting. It's a spectacle game. Texas rivalry, again, means nothing with the playoffs, but just going to be an exciting game on Monday Night Football on your birthday, actually.
Yep.
I think the NFL really dropped the ball by not making this the Thanksgiving game. Obviously, we'll talk about another one in a little bit, but the Detroit game always play, usually a division opponent, but then this year it actually means more because they're good this year. And then the Sunday night game being, interconference, Miami, Green Bay, doesn't mean nothing, no ties, but should be a good game. Dallas plays the Giants, and sure, it's a rivalry game. It's the worst team in the NFC versus one of the better ones. Even though it should be a rivalry game, I don't expect it to be close, and literally that is the last game I would have chosen to be on Thanksgiving.
Why couldn't it have been Washington?
Yeah,
you would have been very excited.
Washington has actually played Dallas, I think, 3 times in the last 6 years on Thanksgiving. 2 of the years Dallas blew them out. Last year was one of them where it was just, I think it was 35 points in the span of 6 minutes. But yeah, again, any other game would have been better than the Giants game. But getting back to Houston, Dallas, again, like you said, it's a big brother. It's a brother versus brother kind of matchup. There's going to be a lot of smack talking. We have a lot of Texans fans, Cowboys fans in our group chats. I think Houston wins this game probably.
Yeah.
Very exciting game that should be one to watch. and we'll just kind of see where it goes. Hopefully, everybody's healthy at this point in the season.
Right. And then week 6, Buffalo versus the New York Jets. It's the first game between them. And I want to emphasize that division is just so wide open. It is wide open that these games are going to mean so much between the Jets, the Buffalo Bills, and the Miami Dolphins. And we're going to get to a couple more of those games here in a second, or one more of those games here in a second. So this is definitely one of those games where, can Aaron Rodgers do it? Is Buffalo still capable without all their receivers? And it's early in the year. It's not cold enough for Buffalo to be like, this is how we win. So I think it's a very interesting game for sure.
Yeah. So another Monday Night Football game. They did really, up and down job for the Monday slate. We talked about it in our schedule reaction video. We basically picked out the 4 good ones, but it'll be really interesting because they're coming from opposite paths on the early start of the season. So Buffalo, again, after Arizona, they have 4 straight games against tough AFC opponents: Miami, Jacksonville, Baltimore, Houston. Gauntlet for a lot of tiebreaker implications. Could be 3-3 after that stretch, but really tough stretch. The Jets, after San Fran, which let's pencil in a loss, for example, could play up to 4 first or second year quarterbacks with Tennessee, New England, Denver, Minnesota. So they'll be really riding high.
Right.
But you don't know if that's a false narrative or not, because they'll probably enter the game 4-1 or with a better record than Buffalo at least. But this will be a true test of, like, is that, faux, or is, are y'all actually
exactly.
legit? And again, it comes down to Aaron Rodgers. If he's healthy, he's actually playing okay. He doesn't have to be back to his MVP form for this team to be competitive. But
yeah, they have a solid defense.
This is a game not only is a division impact, playoff impact. It basically is like, all right, where are these teams actually as we hit the halfway point in the season?
And then we'll just keep going with this New York Jets versus in division rivals. Miami, week 18.
Yep.
Miami and the Jets on week 18. That game will kind of, I think personally, I think that's where we figure out who the final wild card is, or if we figure out that there's 3 wild cards from the same. Because I think Buffalo, and this is something that we've had this conversation about, Buffalo, the Jets, and Miami are all basically ranked in the same area for us.
Right.
And when 1-2 games could change everything. And so this game is like, okay, who wins the division? Or who wins the conference possibly? Division possibly. Who is the third team, and first team out of the playoffs? And it's really close. It is so close.
Yeah, so with the week 18, again, the way the schedule works, every single team plays a division game the week 18, the last week of the season. This is the game that we're projecting to be flexed into the Sunday night game, which is usually the big game, the winner go home kind of game to really kick off the playoffs. And we've seen in the past. So with Miami and the Jets, those are really the only 2 that we see are like, oh, these are truly going to be 2 playoff teams that probably are not certain where their exact seeding are. And they're both going to be vying for it. And so, it's win or go home, or, again, with Miami last year, they were the 2 seed. And then after 2 games to end the year, they were the 6 seed. And then they had to go to Kansas City. Right. It makes all the difference in the world. And this is the type of game with Miami having a tough stretch to lead up to it. And then the Jets being right there. This could be the difference with Miami of hosting somebody in 80-degree weather or having to travel to a night game 10 degrees.
Yeah.
Like, that's all on the board, and that's why it's such a big game for Miami.
Well, this is also a game where you look at, like, seeding wise, they could be second, or they could all of a sudden be like they did last year, 6th. And it wouldn't surprise me if Miami is in 7th, 6th through 2nd. That wouldn't surprise me at all. I don't think that they're going to be the 1 seed by any means, but because there are so many good ones. But it's just what could happen week 18 with this one game, kind of like how Buffalo knocked them off last year. Like you were saying, changed everything. And they got to play in the coldest game ever, basically. Right. So, and then the Chargers versus Baltimore, week 12. I'm going to let you get this one.
Yeah, so this is the Harbaugh Bowl. Jim Harbaugh is back in the NFL. John Harbaugh, obviously the longtime coach for the Baltimore Ravens. It's just always fun watching them play against each other. When it was San Fran Baltimore, that was a Super Bowl matchup in 2012, or I'm sorry, 2013.
Third, fourth.
No, 2012.
No,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm psyching myself up. So yeah, they play very similar styles, and Baltimore is going to be the team on paper that is a contender and all that good stuff. Well, the Chargers are the team that are just as well coached. There's some Baltimore players like J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards both going to the
Right.
Chargers. There's narratives there. There's just smash mouth football. It's going to be a huge smash mouth, probably low scoring game. It's not going to be sexy.
It's gonna be fun.
But it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's gonna be so much fun watching those two coaches or two brothers get after it. Top 10 coaches, both of them in the league. And so we get good football on a week 12. That is not our only week 12, actually, funny enough. The next week 12 is Green Bay versus San Francisco. That game I find interesting because of course, last year's playoff run and everything with Green Bay. I think at that point we'll know how good Green Bay is.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
If they are what most of the public expects them to be, this will be a very high playoff implication type of game. And we'll just have to wait and see to see if they are actually as good as the public is seeing them.
Exactly. So with Green Bay, again, they're a team that's hard to know where they're going to end up because they finished the year so strong, and people are just like, they hold them already up here, but they were a 500 team for 3 months.
Yeah.
And then they caught fire, and it was right around Thanksgiving. Remember the Detroit game where all of a sudden 21-0 in the first quarter against Detroit, and we're in our group chat. What is happening? What is all this? What are we doing? And then they go from that game and just continue on, and then go on a playoff run where they dominate Dallas, almost take out San Francisco on the road. And that was with the youngest playoff team in a couple decades. So we'll see how it happens. But this is a huge benchmark game because this is right before Green Bay has 3 consecutive primetime games. The following short week, home game against Miami. Then the following Thursday at Detroit. And then Sunday Night Football against Seattle on the road. So I wouldn't consider just impossible stretch, but losing San Francisco at home, that's really, and then on top of that, right before that in Chicago, that's a stretch where, you could drop 4 of those 5 and then be on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
So, and again, we're going to be comparing Chicago and Green Bay all off season. Like that's the stretch that's going to decide, hey, are we the 3rd team in this division? And we have to fight for the final spot instead of being secure. This is a way to start that runoff with a bang. Taking out San Francisco at home would go a long way to securing their playoff spot and then being there in the postseason come January.
Yep. And then another NFC North battle. We got week 13. You got Chicago versus Detroit, and we think that Chicago is a playoff team. And that is not completely the narrative right now, but you should kind of hop on that because they have a great roster and they are ready to go. Great schedule. I'm sorry. And it should be a team that, is capable of doing some big things. Chicago versus Detroit, week 13, if they beat Detroit, we should secure them a spot, obviously, but that also puts them possibly as the number 2 team in that division.
Right.
Over the Green Bay Packers.
So again, just start believing. Look at their schedule, and I'm going to read it off just quickly. Tennessee, Houston, Indy, the Rams at home, Carolina at home, Jacksonville at home, a bye, then Washington and Arizona on the road, followed by 3 straight home games that includes New England and Minnesota, and then a home game with Green Bay as well. How do you not see 7, maybe 8 wins out of that? It's pretty remarkable considering, where we see they're coming from. So you follow up a 3-game home stretch against 2 non-playoff teams, and then you're going on a short week, Thanksgiving, spotlight game against one of the NFC favorites.
Right.
It's kind of similar to what we said about the Jets. This is a benchmark. I know your record is what it is, but this is the test. Like, hey, this is the big dog.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about Detroit being a big dog. That's crazy. But this is one of the favorites. How are you going to respond? And we saw last year how Detroit was rolling before they're kind of getting handled against Green Bay, and Green Bay started their run. But they were actually going into that game with a lot of momentum at home on a short week, and then Green Bay does that to them. Chicago can do very well the same thing, and it's going to be a huge benchmark, especially with Caleb Williams. If we anticipate him having as great of a rookie year as he could, it should be very, very, very high anticipation for that game.
Yeah, and then moving on to the next, we got an AFC North battle between Cincinnati and Baltimore in Week 5. It's kind of the first big battle in that division, and we think that's one of the best divisions in football. So we kind of have to shout out, that those two teams, Cincinnati and Baltimore, both vying for the number 1 overall seed. I've seen in multiple different mocks of playoff predictions that Baltimore or Cincinnati are top 3, along with Kansas City, and then even Houston if you get even that far back. But so this is a big game just for the end of year seedings in the playoffs.
Right. So again, we kind of recap what they're leading up to with those games. Your first 4 weeks, both of them play Kansas City on the road. Weeks 1 and 2, those are the two opponents for the Chiefs. But the Bengals, other than that, they get Carolina, Washington, New England. 1, 2, and 3 in terms of worst records last year. So they should at very least be 3-1 going into that game, right? Whereas Baltimore, that's the end of their gauntlet. They go Chiefs, Raiders, at Cowboys, Buffalo. So they could very well be 2-2, could be 3-1. But either way, that's going to be a big deal in terms of seeding. And we talked about Baltimore. If they get off to an okay start, they're playing a lot of catch up. And on top of that, a lot of those games being division game or seeding wise, going to have tiebreakers.
Games. Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas Cincinnati, if they drop to Carolina, like Dallas, or not the same thing, but if they drop a cheap game to one of these non-conference bad teams, it's not the end of the world. But what's important is beating your division at home, and these teams always duke it out back and forth. Baltimore's actually had the upper hand of Cincinnati, but because Cincinnati always usually gets off on slow starts, it's going to be really a tipping point of like, okay, this is where we kind of hit the ground running.
Right, and roll over.
It'll be unfamiliar territory for them to already be 3-1 or hot. It's going to be important to stay that way as you go into like a road stretch that they're going to.
Yeah, and then we have Kansas City versus Houston in Week 16. That game, I believe, is on Christmas. And with that game comes that KC has 3 straight games within 10 days. Yeah. And that's part of why this game is on here. Of course, it's playoff, but...
To correct, it's actually not the Christmas game. The Houston-Baltimore is the Christmas game we talked about earlier. But
correct.
Saturday. It's a Saturday game, standalone game. And again, 2 teams that we anticipate being 11 to 13 wins, that would be fine for the 1 seed. In Kansas City, 3-game stretch in 10 days. It starts with Houston. So, it'll be the second game after Cleveland. So, be very important for Kansas City to just kind of hold home field and win the games that they should. But, with Houston, benchmark, when they had their run with Deshaun Watson and company, they were able to take out every single team, but it always seemed like they had to go on the road to either New England or Kansas City.
Yeah,
that's where their postseason run ended during the J.J. Watt era, Deshaun Watson, etc. So with C.J. Stroud, looks like a great top 5 quarterback potential.
Right.
People already want to place him here. Well, again, we got to see it.
Let's see winning the big games. They got multiple big games, like we said, the Baltimore game, now the KC game back to back. So he'll have an opportunity, obviously. And then you go to Buffalo versus KC, and this is the Buffalo nightmare, basically. They have to be able to find a way to get over the hump every year. Kansas City finds a way to beat them no matter what happens. You get a coin flip wrong, and of course, this is due with seeding, but it's more of a game of like principle. Can Buffalo do it?
Yes.
And I don't know. Obviously, we probably would take KC in this game right now, but Buffalo will have more riding on it than KC will in my eyes.
Exactly. So the biggest thing is with this game, not only there's playoff implications with tiebreakers and whatnot, they always entertain us.
Oh
Kansas
yeah.
City, Buffalo, over the last 3 or 4 years with Josh Allen, and actually Buffalo has had the upper hand 2 of the last 3 winning in the regular season, but they just can't get over the hump of the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes. A lot of people view them as quarterbacks 1 and 2 in football. So, you know, just fireworks. It's going to be the primetime game, or not a primetime game, but the game of the week in week 11 that is pretty stacked.
Yeah.
So,
and then one other thing I was thinking, with KC versus Buffalo, you have Patrick Mahomes, who didn't have the receiving core that he had in the past last year.
Mm-hmm.
And he still was able to win a Super Bowl without them. Well, now Josh Allen is the one without the receiving core. He's looking at Shakur and Keon Coleman as his best receivers. Keon Coleman unproven, and a number 3 option in most offenses. And possibly, I guess, you look at Dalton Kincaid as the best true option right now.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to see if he can navigate the waters with all of that, with that situation, similar to how Patrick Mahomes had to last year. So
right. Yeah, and then we'll wrap it up in terms of our most anticipated games. Kind of interconference one. Philly and Cincinnati. It just sounds like on paper a really exciting matchup.
Mm-hmm.
2 up and coming quarterbacks, former Super Bowl runner ups over the last 3 years. Both of them getting there and coming close, but not getting the job done. Cincinnati against the Rams, and then Philly against Kansas City. Obviously, both teams that should be there towards the end, and it's the halfway point in the season, and it's just like it's kind of a weird roadblock of just like, oh, we're both humming, and oh,
now we have to run into one of
we
the
got to
better
run
teams
into
in
each other
football.
and just kind of see. It means nothing with the playoffs. It's just a very, very fun benchmark game that you don't really see that often.
It's just fun to think about the star power in one game.
Mm-hmm.
Just looking at top to bottom athletes and players: AJ Brown, Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, T Higgins, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts.
Mm-hmm.
It's like just a fun atmosphere. You look at the offensive lines, even you got Lane Johnson. Well, you've got Orlando Brown. It's just everywhere you look, there's fun, exciting players. On defense, Darius Slay, Trey Hendrickson, who really broke out this last year. It's just, I'm excited about the players on the field when it comes to this game and seeing just good football players play football.
Right. So yeah, we'll wrap it up there. We appreciate you guys tuning in with us. Please like, comment, subscribe, do all the good things that make this community as fun as it has been, and it is going to continue to grow. Let us know what your favorite matchup is. What are you most excited about with this season? Your team's biggest game. Quarterback, head-to-head matchups. It doesn't matter. We want to hear it all. It's a really fun slate of games this year, and we'll never stop saying that because this football is so fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And anticipation and we're so early.
Mm-hmm.
We still have so much time before football actually gets played, but we get to get excited about this in May. And that doesn't happen, unless you're on a podcast and you're listening to us and hanging out with us and, all that stuff. Like you don't get the same atmosphere, I feel like. And we really appreciate y'all being a part of it and being with us because, that's how we get that same interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And, football season isn't that far away. We got a lot of things coming up: drafts, fantasy, best ball. We're going to continue talking about the scheduling and stuff because it's important. It makes or breaks a team every year. And so we're getting there. May, June, July, and then we're starting some football.
Like we said, it's we've hit the nail on the head of the final puzzle piece. We have it all. Now it's just speculation, making predictions, making our rankings, and we're going to do it all. Whether it be unnecessary or not, it's fun for us, and hopefully it'll be fun for y'all, informative for y'all. Hopefully, fantasy-wise, you can get something out of it. We'll be starting on that very, very soon. We're going to be introing best ball this week, and then we'll be talking some strategy. I've got over 40 videos that we need to be shooting out. Information, strategy, all that fun stuff. The lingo, if you're not familiar, we're going to introduce it to you all, and hopefully you can continue to ride with us on this fun train.
Yeah, and we're going to definitely be doing auction drafts. That's going to be a big part of our You were talking strategy. That
Yep.
makes me think auction drafts. You got to, look into that too. So we're going to do that for y'all. It's just going to be a fun process getting there. And then we get to watch football and we get to actually see if we get to reap the rewards of what we said. So
about 100 days left till season opener. So let's get it started.
We appreciate y'all and we'll see y'all next time.